This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Illustrations. If you love quirky, colorful art transformed into fun, handmade stationery items, pretty much guaranteed to brighten somebody's day, that's just what you'll find in my new online shop at finelimeillustrations.com. That's fine as in I'm fine, lime as in the fruit, illustrations.com. Browse the entire collection or sign up for my email list to see some behind-the-scenes peeks into my studio. You'll also get first notice of new product launches and subscriber-only sales. And as an added little bonus, you'll also receive a free coloring sheet to help you relax and de-stress from your day. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I am your host, Melissa, and this week's episode is actually the last episode of season 4. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you know that we take a summer hiatus where we step back through the end of June, July, and August just to take a little break and focus on other things and summer vacation. So yes, today's episode is the last one for this season, and the podcast will be back in September with season 5, which is like a really big number to me. I can't believe it'll be the 5th season. But I don't know the exact date. What I can tell you is it will be the first Friday after Labor Day. I think that is September 8th, but I don't have a current calendar in front of me right now. But that's when we'll be back, and we will start recording episodes in August for that. And on that note, if you feel that you have an interesting story to share as a creative entrepreneur, or as somebody who creates for a living, or as somebody who provides services to women who create for a living, we'd love to hear from you. Maybe season 5 is your year to be on the show. So if that is you, or if you know somebody who would make a great guest on the show that you think we should talk to, please do get in touch. I will leave a link in the show notes to a form that you can fill out. And also on that form is a whole wealth of information, everything you need to know about being on the show. So I'd love to hear from you. If you are thinking of submitting an application to be on the show because you have something significant happening in your business in the next year, please note that we do record quarterly. So I don't record every week. I record in batches. And so if you are planning for something that you would like to come out at a certain date, get in touch a few months ahead of time so that we can make sure that it's recorded and ready to go at the appropriate time. So that is housekeeping item number 1. Throughout the summer, I will be sharing a few episodes from the archive. I haven't decided which ones yet, but that's something I do every year. I will be uploading old episodes to YouTube for those of you who like to listen over there. I will be creating brand new episodes for those of you who subscribe to our premium content feed on Buzzsprout. There will be at least one new episode a month. I may do more if I think I have something interesting to talk about that you might like to listen to. So for those of you who are already subscribed to that, you'll have access to those episodes throughout the summer. For those of you who would like to subscribe and help financially support the podcast so that I can keep doing the main podcast for free, and keep it as ad-free as possible, you can sign up through that Buzzsprout link, which I will put a link to in the show notes. It's $3 a month, and you get access to one brand new episode per month that is only available on our subscriber-only feed. So for those of you, again, if you are already supporting the podcast, it is truly so appreciated, and it really does help make things a little bit easier around here to keep the podcast going. So that is housekeeping item number 2, I think. The other thing that I wanted to mention before we dive into this week's episode is I just wanted to say, hey, you know what? It is June. We are coming up on the end of Q2, and this is a really great time to sit down in your business and take a look at the goals that you made for yourself and for your business way back in December and January, and just do a little check-in with yourself. Make sure that, are you on track? Are you way ahead of where you thought you would be? Or are you further behind than you realized you might be? All those things can happen, but if you don't check in with yourself, you're not going to know. It may also just happen to be that your goals and what you are doing have changed, and maybe it's time to sit down and make some fresh goals for the last half of the year. So I always like to do a little check-in halfway through the year just to see where I'm doing. I did this about 3 weeks ago, actually. I do a check-in at the start of every month, just looking at all the key performance indicators, KPIs, that I have set myself for the year just to see how I'm doing. I had a really, really pleasant surprise at the beginning of June when I realized I was exceeding some of the targets that I had set for myself. And I had no idea. I just had so much going on the last 2 months. I hadn't really been paying much attention, and I had felt like things were not going well. But when I actually sat down and looked at the numbers, I realized I was doing better than I thought I was, and I was doing better than I expected to be doing at this point in the year. So that has told me that some of the things that I started doing back in January and February to push myself forward this year are working. And it's also shown me that maybe I need to revisit my goals a little bit and aim a little higher, or try something a little different, or I don't know. Anyway, so that's something I'll be doing at the end of the month. And it's a great time of the year to just, as I said, have that check-in and make sure that there's no nasty surprises, but also maybe coming across some pleasant surprises you weren't expecting. So I think that's it for all the housekeeping items this week. Today's episode, as I mentioned, is a solo one, and I wanted to talk today about blogging. So a lot of you know that I come from the blogging world. I spent a long time there. Been blogging since 2003, which makes me really old in the blogging world. And that also means that I've been doing it for 20 years, which is wild. But anyway, the reason I want to talk about it today is not because I want you all to go out and become professional bloggers. That is absolutely not what I want you to do, unless that's something you want to do. But I wanted to talk about how blogging can be such a key part of an online business strategy, particularly when you are selling your work or your services. And yes, even if you are creative, even if you are a painter or a potter or a fiber artist or an illustrator or a photographer, any of those, anything you are doing, blogging can play such an integral role in your business for multiple reasons. And we're going to get into all of those today. But the big reason that I wanted to, because I know that for those of you who sell, this is always a challenge. One of the biggest things that blogging can do for you is drive traffic to your website. And yes, even to your Etsy store if you do it right. So that's what we're going to get into today. And I'm really looking forward to it. And the reason I wanted to do it as the last episode of this season is because it can take a little while for blogging to start to generate the results you're looking for. So if you are looking to drive more traffic your way for Q4, particularly if that is your busy season, you need to start doing it now. It is something that takes a little while to ramp up. it can be a cumulative effect. It relies on search engines finding you. So if it's something that you start in November to try and drive traffic to your website in December, it's not going to work. It will work for the following December, but it's not going to work for the current December. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today. So let's get into it. So I know that for many of you, when you hear the term blogging, it probably conjures up some very specific images in your head. You might be thinking of influencers or people who just want to yatter on and on about their grandmother's cookie recipe, or are regaling you with the minutiae of their day. And actually, that is a very, very old-fashioned view of blogging. That is certainly how it started for many of us. That is definitely how it started for me. But one of the things I loved about blogging when I first got started with it was that I realized how potentially powerful it could be. Blogging really democratized the world for those of us who love to write, but knew that we would probably never, ever have the opportunity to be published by a traditional publishing house. All of a sudden, there was this way for us to sit down and write every day and have people actually read it and give us feedback to it and interact with us on it. And that's really how blogging started. And that's how I started with it back on the LiveJournal platform back in the day. And that's how most of the people on that platform also started. And one of the things that I loved about it was that it created this tremendous community. So back in those early days, those first few people that I met blogging, we all read each other's blog posts every day. We commented, we interacted, and we became really close friends, which was really weird. If you think back to it in the early days of the early 2000s, the internet was still a place where, so you're talking to these strangers, you're meeting a person you met online. Like, isn't that dangerous? So it just shows you how far we've come in 20 years, where now we meet our spouses online and we have apps like Tinder. We order our food online and have strangers coming to our house to deliver it. So things have changed a lot in 20 years. But those friends that I made back in those early days, I am still friends with them today. Most of them are no longer blogging. They're all over the world, but we still keep in touch. We're still Facebook friends. We still see each other in person when we have the opportunity to do so. And there's a connection there that really was very strong. And that is something that I thought was really interesting. It was a way to really forge connections. And when you think about sales and marketing, that's a huge part of it. We are forging relationships with the people who we think could use what we're selling, whatever that may be. So that's how I started out with blogging, and that is how blogging started out as a whole. But over the years, it has changed dramatically to the point now where whatever niche you are in, whether it is food, fashion, parenting, finance, tech, movies, whatever, there is somebody out there making a very good living as a professional blogger. I think at this point, it would be a good idea to explain how bloggers earn their revenue. So if you've ever visited a blog, one of the first things I'm sure that you've noticed is the ads. Ads are everywhere. You notice them in between the paragraphs. You'll notice video pop-ups that are either at the bottom of your page or at the top of your page. And all of those, every time those ads play, the website that is hosting them earns some revenue. So that is how bloggers make the vast majority of their income, is through ad revenue. And that ad revenue is 100% tied to traffic. So if you have low traffic, you're going to have low ad revenue. The more your traffic grows and the higher your traffic levels are, the more money you will make. To give you an idea of how much traffic we're talking about here, most of the premium ad networks, which is what you want to be on if you're running ads on your website, require you to have at least 30 to 50,000 sessions per month to your website. Not page views. Page views might be much more than that. Sessions. So that means you have to have 30,000 to 50,000 visitors come to your website every single month. And even at that level of traffic, you won't be earning that much money. It's been a while since I've been involved in the actual ad revenue side of things, but I think if you have about 50,000 sessions per month, you would still be earning under $1,000 a month. So, that's only $12,000 a year. That is not a full-time income. So, as a professional blogger, you are going to want to be pulling in far more than 50,000 sessions a month. You are going to be aiming for 1 million sessions a month. So when we talk about professional bloggers, these are people who know how to drive traffic to their site. They know how to bring people to them. And as creatives, whether we are making a physical thing that we sell or whether we are providing a creative service that we sell, one of the biggest challenges for us can be getting traffic to our website, having people find us. This is one of the reasons that so many of us use platforms like Etsy, because Etsy brings us the traffic. We don't have to do the work. But in exchange for that, Etsy takes a fee off the top. And the same if you decide to sell on Amazon or eBay or any of these platforms, because they're doing the hard part. They are driving the traffic. So they get some money for that. And that's completely fair. But I see so many people, and I did an episode on this recently on whether or not you should have your own standalone store or an Etsy store or both. And I see so many people who say they're fed up with Etsy, they're going to go open their own store, not realizing just how hard it will be to get people to find them once they do that. It really is tough unless you have a strategy to bring in that traffic. And blogging can be a key part of that strategy. Driving traffic to your site is not the only thing that blogging can do to help you with your business. It also is a really great tool to increase your visibility and to build brand awareness and create customer engagement. If you remember back at the very beginning, I talked about how I realized blogging was such a powerful way to form relationships and to build relationships with people who are interested in what it is that you do. Blogging is also a really great tool to communicate your expertise and your authority and build trust. And that all combines to help with SEO. So one of the things that Google looks at when they are determining where you're going to show up in search engine results or search engine optimization, SEO, is they have what's called your EAT score. And E stands for expertise, A stands for authority, and T stands for trust. They are looking to recommend sites that have the expertise in that particular topic that the person is searching for, that have the authority, and that have built up the trust. And so these things are really important when it comes to SEO, and SEO is really important when it comes to blogging, and SEO is really important when it comes to getting your products out there. So we're going to be talking about SEO today. We're not going to go deep dive into it because that would be not just a whole episode, it would be a whole month's worth of episodes, frankly. But we're going to talk a little bit about it because it is important that you do understand how it works. And if you're familiar with Etsy, you already know the basics of SEO because Etsy is a search engine in its own right, and we all talk about Etsy SEO. But now we're going to do it for platforms like Google and Bing and things like that. So how do you even get started with blogging? Well, if you already have your own website, you probably already have all the tools you need to start a blog, whether you are on WordPress and using WooCommerce, whether it's Shopify, Squarespace, Wix, all of those platforms give you the ability to create a blog. So if you already have a website, you already have the tools that you need to get started. If, however, you are only on Etsy, you will have to start a website. And probably one of the easiest ways to do that is to use one of the web building platforms like a Squarespace, like a WordPress. WordPress is kind of the gold standard when it comes to blogging. That is the platform that virtually all professional bloggers use. It's very powerful. It is highly optimized for SEO, and it just has a lot of tools to help you improve your SEO within your writing that are not as easy to find on some of the other platforms. The problem is WordPress is not necessarily the best platform for e-commerce. There is the WooCommerce component of WordPress, but it is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a bit of a beast. It's not necessarily the most user-friendly or easiest way to get set up. So as big a fan as I am of WordPress, I use Shopify for my online store. And I do not like the blogging tools on Shopify, but I far prefer the Shopify interface for the e-commerce part of my business. And so I sacrifice some of the blogging capabilities that I would have on WordPress in order to have an easier, smoother online store. And I make the most of the blogging tools that Shopify has to offer, which can be a little bit frustrating at times. But if you plan to only be on Etsy, then maybe opening up a WordPress site is a good idea for you. If you are fairly confident that you don't want to go down the route of having your own online shop, you only want to sell on a platform like Etsy or eBay. But if you have a little inkling in your head that you might at some point like to start selling online, you might want to look at one of the other platforms out there, like a Squarespace or a Wix or a Shopify. All of these platforms cost money in some form or other. So Wix, Squarespace, and Shopify all have a monthly fee, but they handle everything on the tech side for you. So you don't have to worry about having a hosting company like you would with WordPress. WordPress is free, but you're going to have to pay hosting fees every month, which are going to range anywhere from $10 to hundreds of dollars per month, not per year, per month. So however you look at it, there is a cost attached to doing that. So that'll be your first step, is actually getting set up with a platform where you can actually blog. And as I said, if you already have your own online shop, the platform you're using in all likelihood already has a blogging component to it. You just need to activate it and start using it. The next step in your blogging journey is figuring out what your blogging goals are. So for a lot of us, our goal is to drive more traffic. And for many of us, it is also to help increase that expertise, authority, and trust factor, which can be so important when you are trying to convince people to either buy from you or, and maybe even more importantly, when you're trying to convince somebody to hire you. So if you are a photographer, a graphic designer, a copywriter, any of those things, you need to have a way to demonstrate that you know what you're doing and that you know what you're talking about and that you are somebody who is an expert that should be hired. So that's where blogging can really help if you're in the creative services. In fact, if you are a creative service provider, I really, really highly do recommend that you start a blog if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, keep at it. So you need to define your goals and what it is that you want to get out of blogging. So is it traffic? Is it more sales? Is it more brand awareness? Is it more media inquiries? Is it more customer leads? Is it more clients actually signing on the dotted line? What are you hoping that blogging will do? It could even be something as simple as, I want blogging to help me decrease my dependence on Facebook and Instagram ads. Running ads on platforms like social media can be very expensive, and it can also feel like a bit of a Groundhog Day situation where you have to keep feeding the beast in order to in order to keep getting the results that you need. Blogging is a way that you can do something very similar, but without paying those huge advertising costs every month. So there's still some costs attached with blogging, but it can really help in terms of decreasing your marketing budget. And I also want to say something here. I've been talking about blogging as if the only way to do it is by sitting down and writing, but there are other ways to blog. YouTube is a fantastic blogging platform, except instead of creating written blogs, you are creating video blogs. How many times have you gone over to YouTube to figure out how to do something in your business? Whether it's to set up your shop, or whether it's to learn a new knitting technique, or figure out how to make your printer work. By the way, I found a really great channel for any of you who print a lot of your artwork at home. I'll leave a link to it in the show notes. But the guy has saved me on multiple occasions with this channel. So anyway, that's where we go. We go to places like that because we're asking a question, or we have something that we want to learn, and we come across these experts who show us how to do the thing that we need to do, and we start following them because they know what they're talking about. And very often, these people also sell. YouTube has a really fantastic buying culture around it. I have seen so many creatives, particularly in my niche as an illustrator and an artist, who sell a lot of product through their YouTube channel. That's how they become known. That's how they build their audience, and that is how they build their customer base. And YouTube is just blogging visually instead of with the written word. So that is definitely something that you can also try. And you can also do that without having to create your own website. You can drive them to your Etsy shop. If you already have your own website, you can drive them to your own website. So a couple of people that I've watched do this, one is Catnip Illustrations out of the UK. I have been following her for years. I have mentioned her multiple times on the show. Up until recently, she only had an Etsy shop. She just launched her Shopify store, I think last month. But for the last 5 or 6 years, however long I've been following her, she only had Etsy. And she drove traffic to her Etsy store through her YouTube channel. She went from, when I started following her, she had, I think, less than 1,000 followers. And now I think she is over 100,000 or close to it, somewhere in that range. And all those people are her, they buy from her. They've watched her grow. They've forged a relationship with her. They feel emotionally connected to her because they've seen all the steps and stages she has gone through to grow her business. And she's still very focused on the art and the illustration. So don't discount video blogging as a way to blog as well. That is a perfectly legit option, besides what we consider the more traditional blogging route. So that's what you need to do next. You need to define what your blogging goals are, and they should align with your business's strategy. So if your strategy this year is that you want to grow and reach new people, blogging would be a great way to do that. The next step is creating the content. And this is the part where a lot of people get tripped up, because we all sit there and we're like, okay, so I'm going to start a blog, or I'm going to start a YouTube channel. What do I talk about? What do I write about? Like, what kind of content am I going to create? And how is it going to get people to come to my website? How are people going to find me? These are all really good questions, and they're all things that you need to think about. So the first thing to think about is that the vast majority of people who find blog posts do so through search. They do it through searching on Google, Bing, YouTube, Pinterest. And yes, Pinterest is also a search engine. It's a visual search engine. And this is where creating eye-catching graphics for your blog posts is going to come in, because that's what people are going to pin on Pinterest. And you have a really great opportunity with those graphics to reinforce your branding. So that's where more of the brand awareness piece comes in, and reaching new people who may not find you via Google. So, okay. We need to get found on the search engines. And how do we do that? Well, the first step is creating high quality content that people are looking for. This is where a lot of people get tripped up in the creative space, because let's say that, like me, you sell greeting cards. So what do I write about that people are searching for when it comes to greeting cards? Like 10 greeting cards to send your family for their birthdays? That doesn't sound very interesting. Are people really searching for that? Yeah, that's where it can get complicated. So you have to sort of think a little bit outside the box, because the idea here is that you want to draw in people who may never have heard of you, may not know what you sell, but who are interested in some aspect of what it is that you do. So I'm going to use a few different examples here. The first one I'm going to use is a photographer. So I have noticed that a lot of photographers, their blog posts generally are sharing the results of their latest shoot. I see this particularly with weddings and engagements and family type photography. So the photographer will go out, they'll have a session with a newly engaged couple, and then they will create a blog post for it the next day as a way to show the work that they did and to talk a little bit about the couple, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, there's nothing wrong with doing that, and that is a great way to create blog content, but it's not necessarily blog content that anyone is searching for or that is going to draw them to you. So here's an idea, if you're a photographer, that may help bring people to you. What if you created a blog post called 5 Tips that will make you more comfortable posing at your next photo shoot? That's content that I'm sure a lot of people out there are looking for. How many of us are comfortable being photographed? Most of us hate it. We don't know how to stand, we don't know where to look, we don't know what to do with our hands. It's all just very uncomfortable. And we rely on the photographer to put us at ease during the session. But if you're like me, and I worry about these things, I am going to go online and see if I can find something that tells me ways that I can feel more comfortable, or ways that I can stand, or ways that I can look that are going to make my photo shoot more comfortable for me. Another thing that people might be searching for are, what are the best colors to wear for a photo shoot? Those are the kinds of topics that people are looking for online. They're looking for answers to. And so those are the kinds of things that can pull them to your website. Looking for ways to pose at your next photo shoot? Here's 5 great ways to pose as an engaged couple. This is the great thing about it. You can turn this one thing into multiple blog posts. So you can do you can do a blog post on 5 ways for couples to pose during an engagement shoot. You could do an episode on 5 ways to pose for your senior portrait for anyone who's graduating from high school, or 5 ways to pose at your next family get-together portrait. So where you might include things like how to include multiple generations in your photo shoot and things like that. So each of those can become its own blog post. So right there, out of one idea, you've gotten 3 or 4 posts that you can write. And what's really great about these is that they do double duty. So not only is it something that people will find you by searching online when they type that into Google, or when they talk to their Google listening device. Is that the Google one, or is that Alexa? I don't have any of these. I just use Siri on my phone. Anyway, so those are the kind of questions that they're going to be asking before they get ready for their shoot. But you can also use those posts as information that you send to clients after they've signed the contract. So if somebody is coming to you for their senior photo shoot, you can send a link to that post prior to them showing up and saying, hey, I just thought I'd send you a link to this article I wrote on some really easy ways to get comfortable posing for your senior shoot. And you might want to review them before you come for our appointment so that you're feeling more comfortable with the whole process. It's a great way to repurpose that content and use it to build a relationship with your client. One of the posts that I have written on my website that has brought in a lot of traffic for me has nothing to do with greeting cards or stickers or art prints. It's a post on how to choose markers when you're purchasing them as a gift for a budding artist. This is a post I wrote in response to questions I get every Christmas. Most people who follow me or who like my artwork are very curious about how I create it. I mainly use alcohol markers, so Copic markers, but I use other tools as well. And I get questions every year about what kind of markers do you use? You know what? My kid is really into drawing, and I thought it would be really cool to get them a set of markers for Christmas. Which one should I buy? And not understanding what the difference between an alcohol marker and a water-based marker is. So I finally got sick of answering all these emails. I shouldn't say that. I don't get sick of them, but I feel like I'm writing the same thing over and over again. And so I thought, I'm just going to put this in a blog post. And that's what I did. I created a blog post. It's on my website. It works because it brings people to me. A lot of people are actually looking for that information, and so they're searching for it. It brings them to me. But I'm also an artist who uses those tools. So I am solidifying my expertise and my authority using those tools. And if you're looking to use those kinds of tools, you probably are already a fan of that kind of artwork. So you're landing on my website and you're landing on the site of somebody who creates art for sale that you are already interested in. So do you see how this is working? It's not a direct, hey, I'm going to Google this and now I'm going to buy this. There's a pathway that people are going, and you're pulling them in and guiding them along that path. So what's really important is in that blog post, you want to make sure that you are linking to some kind of product or service on the rest of your site that is a good fit. So let's say that you are creating that blog post with 5 posing tips for your senior shoot. You want to mention somewhere on that blog post that you offer senior portrait shoots as a service. So it might be as simple as just having a little banner at the bottom of your blog post saying, are you looking for a senior portrait photographer and you're in the XYZ area? I'd love to work with you. Here's a link to my portfolio, or here's where you can learn more about the services that I offer. And I have other posts on how to prep for your senior shoot. And then you might have a list of links at the bottom of your blog post that link to other posts you have on your website that are related to senior photography shoots. So it could be things as simple as a blog post. What kind of outfits should I bring to my senior portrait shoot? How can I do my makeup for my senior portrait shoot? How can I prep for different locations for my senior portrait shoot? So do you see what I'm saying here is that you're trying to come up with answers to questions that people are looking for. This is how you provide that high value content. And it also helps demonstrate your expertise and your authority and shows that you know what you're talking about. And they suddenly realize that they're on the website of a person who specializes in photography for senior portraits. And hey, maybe this is the right photographer for them, and maybe they should take a look at their portfolio and see if they are accepting new clients. Then this is where it can get really interesting from a blogging perspective and from a sales perspective is if you're a photographer, chances are you are probably confined to a specific geographical area unless you have very high-end clients who are willing to shuttle you around the country or the continent. But for most of you, you're going to be confined to a specific area. And so let's say you're a senior portrait photographer in the Metro Vancouver area, but your blog posts are going to be visible to anyone who has internet access. What do you do? How do you capture those people when they land on your website, but they're too far away to potentially hire you? This is where creating some kind of digital product that you can sell as a resource can be really useful. And we did a past episode on this. I will put a link to it in the show notes. The title of it is escaping me right now, but I think we talked about how service-based businesses can create products. This is a great example. So maybe what you put together is a really short how to pose for your senior portrait guide, and it's something that you charge $9, $10 for. It's a digital download, and so anyone who lands on your site who is struggling with this can download it and can pay you the $10 and download it and be on their merry way. They may not have the opportunity to hire you because they're on the other side of the country, but you've still provided them with something that they can purchase from you and earn you some revenue. So you can take advantage of the people that you're pulling to you, even if you may not be able to directly help them in the way that you are used to thinking of helping them, if that makes sense. So that's a really great way, if you're a creative service provider, to monetize in an additional way from just providing your services and using your blog posts to pull those people to you to purchase those items. Okay, if you're not a photographer and you don't draw with alcohol markers, what are some other things that you can do? So this is where you're going to really need to sit down and start brainstorming some ideas. Now, I mentioned earlier on that, if you sell greeting cards like I do, like what on earth do you write about? So one of the things that I actually wrote about, and this came out of me struggling with the fact that I create something and I sell something that isn't necessary, really, when you think about it. And it is putting something out there into the world that is not meant to last forever. Most people, when they buy a greeting card, they gift it. The person who receives it opens it, reads it, and is like, oh, that's nice. And they might keep it if it has a sentimental note inside or something that they want to remember. But for most of us, when we receive greeting cards, we hang on to them for a few weeks and then they go in the recycling bin. And that's always really bothered me. So I came up with an article on 10 ways that you can recycle and repurpose a greeting card. And they're just fun little things, as simple as turning it into an art print or turning it into a postcard that you send to somebody else or using it to create decorations or, there's a whole bunch of things that I put on this post. And that was a way for me to write an article that appealed to people who actually really do like to send and receive cards, without trying to tie it into something really strange that was awkward and didn't fit. And of course, in the post, I link back to some of the cards that I sell. The images that I use are cards that I make. And so there's a way that I'm pulling people, and there's a way that I'm showing people that I sell this product and you can go buy it. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to do. Now, let's take me out of it and let's take our photographer out of it. What other types of content can you create? Okay, so one that is really popular and really easy to do and that will work for almost every single one of us is to do seasonal trend content. So you have probably seen this, back in the day. Do people still read magazines the way that I do? I'm a bit of a magazine nerd. I love magazines. I never stopped looking at them, but I know they're not as popular now as they used to be. But back in the day, all the fashion magazines would do like a summer trend, spring trend, what's on tap for the coming season. And they would show you all these different things like these cute shoes or this cute jacket or this really pretty handbag or whatever. And the same with home decor. This spring, orange pillows are really in, and the color palette is bright citrus shades and things like that, or it's, neutrals or whatever the case may be. This is a great way that you can directly tie a blog post to your product. So let's say that you make pillows. Okay, how do you sell them in a blog post? A great blog post would be 10 really easy ways you can refresh your living room this spring. And you can put in a whole bunch of different simple things that they could do. It could be something as simple as trying a new candle scent or adding a new piece of artwork to their walls. And of course, if you sell pillows, one of the easiest ways to freshen up your space for spring would be to refresh the throw pillows on your couch or your chairs. We love this coral paisley print pillow from our new spring collection. And of course, you're going to show a photo of it and you're going to link back to the actual product listing. And you're going to do that with multiple pieces from your product line. You do want to make sure that you include other things that you may not make. So you may not sell candles because you're a pillow designer. But you still want to include items that can help them bring the whole room together. So that means you may be featuring products that are made by somebody else. And this is a really great way to form relationships with other people who are in a similar niche to you. Find a candle maker who you could form that kind of relationship to, because chances are they're probably going to do a post on the latest trends for spring on their website, where they're going to be focusing in on their scent lineup for spring. But they may also want to include some other things like pillows as a quick way that you can change up your decor, whatever. So if the two of you collaborate together and feature one another in your own style reports for the season, that's a great way to get what are known as external links. And one of the things that you need to understand with blogging is there's two very important things for SEO. Well, actually, there's a whole bunch of important things for SEO, but two that are really important is to make sure that your blog posts have internal links, which means you're linking to things on your website. It could be other blog posts. It could be your products. You want to make sure that you have at least one internal link on your blog post. But you also need external links. And this is where, if you form those kind of relationships with another seller, another creative, where you feature one another's work, and then you're going to have an external link to their product or their service or whatever the case may be. If you're a photographer, maybe it's a makeup artist or somebody who does hair. So, think about how you can create those kind of relationships with other people in your niche and help each other grow with those internal and external links. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the kinds of things that you can do. So if you're a candle maker, maybe you do a blog post on 5 scents that are most evocative of fall. And it could be things like pumpkin spice and vanilla and cinnamon and all those things that we associate with the fall season. If you are an artist, a watercolor artist, maybe you create content on how to purchase brushes. What are the best brushes? Or what are the 5 brushes that all watercolor artists need to have in their brush collection? What's the difference between cold press and hot press watercolor paper? Things like that. Those are the kinds of things that people might have questions about and that they are Googling, and they're looking for those answers. You can provide them. Be an expert. You might want to even show, like, this print that I am selling here was originally done on cold press paper, whereas this print was originally done on hot press paper. Is that the right term? Hot press? I know cold press, but anyway, if you're a watercolor artist, feel free to correct me on that. So there's the cool thing when you do something like a trend report is you can do a trend report for every season. So that gives you 4 blog posts right there. And I would aim to try and do at least 12 posts a year, at least once a month. If you can do once every 2 weeks or once a week, that is fantastic. But if you can't, that's okay. The one thing you do want to do is be consistent. Google likes to see fresh content. They like to see consistency, and they like to see that the lights are on at home. And sometimes when we have a product website, particularly one where we are not adding or deleting a lot of product, the site can become kind of stale looking in Google's eyes because not much is changing. And that's where blogging can really help with that if you're putting out new content consistently. It just shows Google that you're alive, that this is a site that is still relevant, that is still being used, that is still very much active. So that's something to think about when you're trying to determine how often to post and what to post. So what I was talking about there is that, if you're doing like a style report, obviously you've got 4 seasons, that's 4 style reports. You might also want to do very specific style reports. So it could be something as along the lines of, how to freshen up your patio, or trends that we're seeing in for Mother's Day parties, or I don't know. But think about more than just the 4 seasons. Think about specific holidays in there. Can you create content around those holidays? Another thing to look at for content, and I alluded to it a little bit earlier, is FAQs. What are the questions that you get asked over and over and over again in your business? The ones that you get tired of writing out emails about or answering questions in chat about, can you turn those into a blog post? First of all, if those are questions that you're getting asked all the time, they are probably questions that people are Googling regularly and they're not finding the answers to. So that's a great way to fill a need, is by answering them and putting that on your website. It also serves a duplicate purpose, because now when somebody emails to ask you that question, you can just say, hey, you know what? That's a really good question. I get asked that all the time. I actually wrote an article on it. Here's a link to it. It will explain everything that you need to know. If you have more questions after that, feel free to drop me a note. But it helps you save time. And we all have those frequently asked questions in our business that we get all the time. So make a list of those and create a blog post for each one of them. That probably right there will give you 4 or 5, maybe 10 or 12 potential blog posts that you can write. And the thing is, once you get going with generating these kinds of content ideas, you tend to think of even more. And I keep, a spot in my planner where I just jot down ideas that come to me for blog posts. You could also do it, in a notes app on your phone, or just anywhere really, that you just try and keep them all in one place. And very often I'll go back and look at that list and be like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. That would be great. That's what I'll write about this month. You can also, and this is something that I do in my services business, I have a monthly newsletter that goes out to my list. Everybody on my list is a client already or a potential client. And so I send out these newsletters once a month where I focus in on one topic related to the services that I provide, to kind of help them understand more about it, or why this would be a good thing for them to do in their business, et cetera, et cetera. And so I send those emails out once a month, and I put a lot of time and effort into them. And then a few months later, I take that email and I flip it into a blog post and put it up on my website. So I'm getting double the content out of it. I'm not reinventing the wheel all the time. And it's a great way to, make extra use of something that I've already come up with. Coming up with ideas for content is one of the hardest parts about blogging. But one of the other really key pieces that you need to be aware of is SEO. And I've alluded to it multiple times throughout the episode, but when you write for the web and when you upload videos to YouTube, all of those things, there are certain things that search engines are looking for in order to return your article as a result when somebody asks a question. The big thing is keywords. You want to make sure that your post contains the keywords that people are searching for. And this can be a little tricky, figuring out what those keywords are. If you're on Etsy, then you're probably very familiar with the keyword strategy. Etsy does it a little bit differently than you want to do it for Google, but the principle is the same. You want to make sure that the things that people are searching for, that you are using those keywords and those keyword phrases in your blog post. So in the example of our posing guide, you want to do a little bit of keyword research, and there are lots of tools out there that can help you with this. Some of them are free, up to a certain number of searches per month. Some of them are paid. There's many of them out there. Key Search, SEMrush, there's lots of them. Anyway, so what these tools can do is they can show you the volume of searches those words are getting every month, and whether there's high competition for those words or low competition. And ideally, what you want to do is you want to hit on keywords that have a lot of people searching for them, but that there's very little competition. And that's really hard to do in this day and age. It was much easier 7 or 8 years ago, but nowadays it's hard to come up with that combination. But that's what you want to look for. You're trying to find words that people are actually searching for. So if we go back to our example of a posing guide, the keywords that people might be searching for there are senior portrait poses, or how do I pose for our next family portrait? Some people search in the form of a question, especially if they're talking to Google. They'd be like, hey, Google, how do I search for, I'm sorry if this triggers your Google machine, but hey, G, how do I pose for my upcoming headshot session? So that how do I pose for my upcoming headshot session is a key phrase. That's something that probably a fair number of people are searching for. So those are the kinds of things you want to make sure they're in your title, and you want to make sure that they're in the actual content of your blog post. With video, it's a little bit different. You're going to be focused more on titles than you are what's actually used, what's actually said in the video. And I'm not an expert on YouTube SEO, so you'll have to do a little bit more research into that. But if you are familiar with YouTube, you know that there are certain things you need to do in order for your videos to surface in search results. And it's the same for blog posts. So you're looking for those keywords, key phrases. You don't want to stuff them in there. You still want the writing to be readable and natural. And there are other things that there's a great tool if you're on WordPress. It's called Yoast SEO. It's a plugin that you use on your WordPress site, and it goes through as you're writing, and it tells you how readable your post is. If you've got it asks you to identify the keywords for the post, and then it tells you if you've got good keyword density. It tells you if your sentence structure is appropriate and readable and all those types of things. So you want to look for things like that. You also want to make sure that you use alt text on your photos. Alt text is a little blurb that you write that describes what's being shown in the photo, so that people who are not able to see the photos for whatever reason, whether it's because they have a vision impairment or they're on a slow internet connection. Yes, there are still places that have slow internet connections, and so they don't download the photos, that kind of thing. Those are all things that Google looks for. Google is really big on accessibility, so it's really important that you fill in all those accessibility tags and text places like alt text, like using the correct headings. So like H1, H2, H3, those are all really important in how your blog post is formatted. You got to remember, your blog post is being read by a robot. It's not being read by a person. So those robots are looking for certain things to identify how the blog post is structured. And that includes things like I mentioned, the H tags, but also whether you use bold text or italics or things like that. Those are all things that those bots look for. Other things that you want to be aware of are speed. So you want to make sure that when you upload images that they're high quality, but that they are small file size. Having a large file size can really impact the speed of your site. And if you have a slow site, Google dings you for that. You want to make sure that your blog is mobile friendly, so that people who are viewing it on their phone, which is most of us these days, on a phone or a tablet, that they're having a good viewing experience. And that includes things like, do you have a lot of annoying pop-ups and stuff like that? So those are all little things that you will get more aware of and will understand more. And like I said, I could do an entire episode just on the SEO alone, but I can't. We don't have time. But there is a really fantastic site out there called moz.com, MOZ.com, and they have a ton of information. They have been around for years, and they are really they have so much information, all aimed at all different levels of people who are learning about SEO. So right from the very beginner up to much more advanced topics. And it's a great place to start. I think they even have a post on SEO for blogging for beginners. I'll see if I can find that. If I can, I will put that in the show notes so that you can check it out. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to look for when it comes to SEO, because the whole point of this is to get found. So you want to create content that people are searching for. Then you want to make sure that you are creating that content in a way that the search engines can recognize it and return you as a search result. And then when people find it, you want them to come to your website and you want them to learn more about you. You want them to appreciate your expertise and your authority. You want to build trust with them. And of course, you want to make sure that that content that has drawn them somehow pushes them towards the product and services that you sell. So you want to make sure that you are linking to products that you sell in those blog posts. You want to make sure that you are linking to your services or to your portfolio or to a freebie to sign up for your email list. Blogs can also be a great tool to bring people onto your list. So make sure that every blog post mentions that you have an email list, and if they would like to receive more useful tips or more useful articles, they should sign up. And if you have a freebie that you give to people when they sign up, make sure that they're aware of that. And then you've captured them. You've captured them. They have given you permission to start building a relationship with them. So make use of that. That's another great way that blogging can help, actually. So those are the things that you want to do with your blog posts. And over time, what happens is as you grow more content, and that content is useful and is properly optimized for reading and for SEO, then you are going to pull those people in. They are going to become customers, and you're going to start getting that traffic that we all so desperately need. And I mentioned if you have an Etsy shop, that this can work for you, Etsy, eBay, any of those platforms. And so your blog does not need to have a shop attached to it to draw people to it. Professional bloggers very rarely have a shop. They may sell a few digital downloads or whatever, but they rely on that ad income. And you can add ad networks to your blog, the blog portion of your site, and earn a little extra revenue that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you've got that standalone blog and you pull them to you, you can still show them your products. You can still link to your Etsy shop, and it's another way for you to drive your own traffic to Etsy. It's also a way that you can capture those all important email addresses that are so hard to do that's so hard to do on Etsy, especially if you don't use Aweber. And so you're capturing those email addresses, and you have a way to talk to them. You have a way to let them know when you're having a sale on Etsy, or when you're clearing items out, or when you've got new products, all of that. And you wouldn't be able to do that if you're only on Etsy. So this is where a blog can really help you as an Etsy seller as well. And I do think it's a great strategy to create, to take your own business into your own hands and not always be reliant on a third-party platform to do it for you, because that has risks on its own, as we've talked about in past episodes. There are other ways that you can bring people to your site. It doesn't just have to be SEO. As I've alluded to in past comments here, you can use it as a networking tool. You can form relationships with other creatives in your niche or in complementary niches. You can collaborate with them and promote one another. You've probably seen people doing this on Instagram. They team up. I'm doing a summer art challenge right now, and it's 5 illustrators who've teamed up on Instagram to run this challenge. And it's a great way for them to expand their audience, because I might be following one of them, but I'm not following all 5. Now I am, right? But, I'm seeing their work. I'm more in tune with what they're doing. You can do that on your blog. You do the same thing. You can create, like I mentioned, gift guides and trend reports, and showcase other people who are doing really great things. And it doesn't always have to be all about you. So that's a really great way that you can bring in more traffic, is by forming those relationships with other blogs. You can have guest bloggers come on. So you can even invite somebody to come on and write a post for you, and with the proviso that you do the same for them. Again, great way to build your audience. And then, of course, you want to mention the other person in your newsletter, and you want them to mention you in their newsletter and things like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can use blogging to increase your audience, to increase your brand awareness, and most importantly, drive that all important traffic. So I have covered a lot here, and I could go on for another hour, 2, 3, and I could do an entire episode on SEO, but I hope that this gives you some ideas for how to get started. And that's the key thing. Start now, because it takes a while to build up that SEO. It takes a while to build up to get that link juice and to get things going. And the longer you wait, the longer it's going to take. It's the same principle, when you start an email list. What's the one thing that all small businesses wish they had done earlier? Start their email list, because you are always going to have 0 subscribers when you have no list. Like, you can't have 1 subscriber or 1,000 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers if you don't have a list. And the same with a blog. You're not going to drive that traffic if you don't have any blog content. So you need that first post. You need that second post. You don't need to become a blogger. You just need to think of it more as an article base that you're creating on your website to answer questions, to educate people, to help them make decisions, to help them design their ideal space, all those things. You're creating it's basically an article base. That's what it is. It's a database of articles, of content that you are using to help the people who you want to buy from you. It's really that simple. So I feel like I talked really, really fast through this whole episode, and I hope I got everything that I wanted to mention, but I hope this was useful, and I hope it really does encourage you to use this, because I know I've been a blogger for 20 years. I know what a powerful tool it can be when it comes to driving traffic and helping you monetize your business in new ways, but also helping you to generate revenue from your existing product and just building that customer base. So that is it for this week. That is it for this month. And that is it for this season. And I hope that you all have a really wonderful summer. I hope that you all get to have some precious downtime. If you've got kids, I really hope that you get the opportunity to spend lots of time with them making memories this summer. And if you don't have kids, you know what? I hope you get to hang out with your dog. I hope you get to spend time in your garden, and I hope you get to go for bike rides and ice cream and all of that stuff. I am just excited at the prospect of having one less thing to do when the weather is just too hot to want to do anything. So I can give myself permission to have a nap. Yes, that is it. Thank you all so much for listening this season and for previous seasons. And please, if you are looking for something to listen to this summer and you're relatively new here, please do go back through our archives. There is lots of content that can be really helpful when it comes to building your own creative business. And there are lots of incredible women who have been interviewed on this show who are tremendously inspiring, and that can give you that little kickstart if maybe you starting to feel a little burnt out, Yes, so I hope you'll go back and look through the archive for something that could tickle your fancy. That's it for now, and I will be back in September with more brand new episodes at the start of season 5. Thanks for listening. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com, or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.